Welcome to, we have another episode of Flipping Miami here. I'm your host, Raul Balufe. Appreciate you guys for listening. And on the other end of here, I got another special guest, young dude, rock star, started wholesaling houses, now is, more in the online marketing, online automation type of world. His name is Carlos Zamora in Investorfuse. Dude, he's an all-around cool dude, man. I was on his podcast a couple days ago, actually, and I think I was on your podcast, I don't know, last year or something. Mm-hmm. And dude, we just had a good time. And I brought him on because I wanted him to share some of the insight he's learned from working with so many investors. They got a ton of people on their platform. They do a lot of education, tons of email blasts, podcast. He's got his own podcast, which I'll put on the show notes here. Just an all-around, pretty well experienced in this niche and in other businesses. So I want to pick his brain a little bit, pull back the curtains and see if we can get something out of him. But dude, I appreciate you coming on.
I appreciate you, man. It's a pleasure, privilege, and an honor to be on the show. And you're definitely somebody I've admired from afar, just down south of 95 in Miami. I'm in Baltimore, Maryland. And we were talking about on my podcast or our podcast, Investorfuse podcast, social media gives you an interesting perception of other people, where you're not in day-to-day contact with them or texting them all the time, stuff like that. But every time you see them make a post or story or comment on something, your brain kind of has like infinite memory. So you kind of can just like piece that together. And as I was saying, the interview that I just did with Raul last week just aired today, Thursday the 30th. So that just aired today. So we were kind of talking about that. The last time I had talked to Raul in depth was the beginning of 2019. And then we just picked it up here. It was like, no time had passed. We kind of both know each other was on. So social media is interesting as far as like perception gathering.
Yeah. It's cool. Actually, yeah, we reconnected because I posted a post on Facebook, which I have to do actually. And it was like a quote about ego is the enemy. And right. He reached out and he's like, yo, dude, I completely agree. Like that book, I think you mentioned something about the book. And then we spoke a little bit about like Eckhart and the power of now and the stuff. So we kind of connected there. I thought it was awesome. Dude, I want to start a little bit from like the top. Let's say we would have met in like high school. Like who was Carlos back then in high school? How were your grades? Did you play sports? Were you social, quiet, good student, bad student, troublemaker? Like who was Carlos back in the day, man, in high school?
Great question. High school. So I played soccer in high school. Always was class clown. Loved to have a good time. Grades were not great because I wasn't really focused. I think I cared more so about like the relationships. And even from a young age, I always was interested just how different people click. I'm super fascinated just how like humans are such animals, and just understanding that each person kind of has their own survival traits, like what they're really, really good at. And that's just successful people are really able to tap into those like survival type traits.
Yeah. I
didn't word it that way in high school. I pretty much just was a class clown, loved to make people laugh, play soccer, play sports, hang out with my friends. Super outgoing, wanted to be liked by people, have fun. But grades were definitely not good. And then high school into college, playing soccer in college, and I'll stop there, but pretty much I didn't know what I wanted to do professionally. I knew my skills, my strengths, and was super confident in that. But I feel like I'm a lot like similar to like a lot of millennials growing up, or even, our parents' range growing up, of not everybody has it figured out when you're in high school or your first year in college, unless you're doing something specialized, which like my family is into. Like my dad's in Miami, he's a doctor. Both my sisters are pharmacists. So unless you have something that you're going to school for that's like super niche, super specialized like that, like medicine, law, accounting, stuff like that, I think a lot of people, that's a huge transitional period for kids growing up in high school, not sure what they want to do. And I definitely fell into that tier.
Yeah. How crazy is the idea that society expects you to know what you want to like study in college or be like at like 17, 18 years old? I think about that. I'm not that much older, and I think you're roughly the same age. How old are you now?
I just turned 30.
Yeah, so 30. I'm 27, but like not being that old, I can't really fathom how high school, college, like society expects you to know what the hell you want to do. Coming out of high school at 17, 18, especially when high schools are not very serious, you're like eating shit all the time. And it's like, all right, cool. I'm ready for my career in, I don't know, whatever. I think it's so strange. But and the reason I'll say is like, so coming out of high school, getting into like more of the grown up world, what in your mind, what was going on? Did you plan on playing soccer and like try to make it pro, or did you have an idea you wanted to get into business at that point, or like what was going on in your mind there?
Yeah, soccer professionally, 100% not.
Really?
I grew up wanting to. Yeah, I mean, I wasn't good enough to play at any big college or anything like that. In an ideal world, yeah, I'd love to be like a pro soccer player in like Europe, like Ronaldo or something. That'd be sick. But I just went for general business administration is what I look for. I was like, you know what? I have entrepreneurial type mindset. I'm good at talking to people. If we want to go deep into subconscious mind, something I talk about when I get asked similar questions, being an outgoing person my entire life growing up, I was told, oh, Carlos, you should be in real estate. Like you like talking to people. Oh, you should be in real estate. So probably hearing that so many times, so I could give you like the base foundational answer. That was probably a variable that played into it. But pretty much I went to community college. Then I went to University of Maryland to finish my 2 years there. I worked as a leasing consultant at like a luxury apartment that I lived in, which was pretty cool. So all my jobs growing up, they've either been like at home or just downstairs in my apartment in college, which is pretty funny thinking of it now. Yeah, so that gave me the opportunity to pretty much just walk apartments with like families, kind of understands what their needs are. The buyer I was working with in that scenario was typically like 40, 50-year-old parents, and then the child that was like my age. Right. So I was able to connect with both. And that's one thing I'm grateful for growing up, having friends, parents that I've had deep relationships with. So kind of like my whole life from that time frame of like high school, even then I was able to connect with people's like parents and have relationships with them. So I can kind of understand like a wide spectrum of not only people's personalities, but their importances as they go through life, and kind of being able to relate to a lot of different demographics. But yeah, college, man, I'll try to make this relatively concise, but pretty much college, same thing. I got my 2-year degree in business, and then I went to University of Maryland to get my 4-year degree in communications. Going into my last year of college, though, I read this book, probably similar to all the awesome people you have on your podcast. When you ask them like what type of books they read, it's Think and Grow Rich and Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I read Think and Grow Rich, and there was this chapter on the principle called autosuggestion, where you're pretty much intentionally feeding your subconscious mind information with the intent of kind of reprogramming your behaviors and actions that you took. So I read that. I think it's chapter 4 of Think and Grow Rich. I read that like the summer going into my last year, and I was like, this is so freaking intriguing, like just learning about the subconscious mind and how it dictates like 95% of your behavior and everything. And I went into my last year of college, finished that. Took me like 4 to 6 months to find a job. So after I had graduated, 4 to 6 months, didn't have a job. I was at home full time. I didn't get a pharmaceutical sales job, which would have been cool at the time, but now it's, I see it as a blessing in disguise. I didn't get it. I was at home. I was home full time babysitting. So this was a graduate level course in patience and humbleness. For me, I was at home full time, graduated, helping babysit my eldest niece who has mild autism. So I was taking her to and from school every day, stuff like that. So at the time I was like stressed, but now as I look back, even like shortly after that, I saw that as definitely like a graduate masterclass level degree in patience and understanding. And that's when I got linked into, that's when I got linked into wholesaling. I'm trying to piece the story together relatively quick. But that's when I got linked into wholesaling. Dan, the CEO of Investorfuse, had a posting just looking for an inside sales job for his real estate investing company. And he was in a rock band with my now brother-in-law, my sister's boyfriend at the time. So I got linked up with that. That was end of 2013. I started wholesaling, wholesaled from end of 2013 until 2016 range. The same CEO, Dan, from there, wholesaling, went on to build Investorfuse, which is pretty much a CRM for wholesalers or investors that are doing direct-to-seller marketing primarily.
Right.
So I did do that period of wholesaling for a couple of years. There was like a 1-month period I was wholesaling at Investorfuse. Investorfuse was just such a good fit as far as personality-wise and how efficient I was, or how well it fit me, I would say, that I went Investorfuse full time about 4 years ago and got brought on as an equity partner. And
wow,
now I'm here getting to connect with studs like Raul on a daily basis, or a weekly basis.
And that's really important, man. You said a bunch of things that I think people might skip over in their little journey. And the reason I asked the question about the high school and the college and the story is everyone comes from a different background. Every single person has his own different journey. And for the most part, and you mentioned it great, like I interview a bunch of rock stars and so do you on your podcast. And I would say like 9 out of 10 of them don't come from like a very wealthy or royalty type family, right? So I think it's important for people to know, man, we're all human, dude. Like Carlos started like just playing soccer, probably eating some shit in high school, just being funny, and that's all good. That's all good. But it's building your character a little bit. You're having fun. And then he started to get serious and saw an opportunity. And it wasn't like, boom, I knew I was going to wholesale, then do Investorfuse and become a partner. Like, it's not like he knew that. Like the path was messy. And, he babysitted his, your cousin, I think you mentioned.
Niece, yeah.
Your niece, sorry. Babysitted the niece. And like, you probably weren't thinking like, oh, I'm going to babysit her. You know what I'm saying? Like, this happened. But you were able to kind of little by little put this together that fit your personality. And overall now, that your journey's not over. It's just begun, like you got plenty of years left in you.
100%.
But I think it's key just to hear that story. It's like inspiring to see like, fuck, it can come from it's something so different. And so it's kind of like fast forward a little bit now. So now you're in Investorfuse. You did some wholesale. So tell us a little bit about like, what does your business life look like now? I know that you got the Investorfuse thing. So like, what do you have your hands in, Are you doing any investing at all, even if it's not real estate? Are you just doing this? Are you doing like any online stuff? Like what's kind of Carlos consumed about in his work life nowadays?
Yeah. Work-wise, I'm 100% Investorfuse. There's one thing that is a pretty popular term, shiny object syndrome. And I've definitely experienced roller coaster type, just like emotions and thoughts around that. And shiny object syndrome is a good thing. And I say in some of our content and stuff like that, the more successful that you are and the more ambitious you are, you should be having more shiny object syndromes.
I think we said, time.
Yeah, I was thinking we were talking about that last time. So in saying that, the last 4 years, just working with hundreds, if not thousands of different investors, there's always different opportunities. If you resonate with somebody like me and you, and you might be doing Airbnbs or something, you're like, oh, you should just do this with me. It's potentially a limiting belief, but I find it very true that it's challenging enough for me to focus on one thing that I have to like burn the bridges and go all in with Investorfuse, because just as a startup and a complete bootstrap from 4 years ago, we're always kind of testing, or at least I am, like how much you can do while staying as lean as possible. So for me, it's been a challenge. There have been challenges presented of like people wanting to work together, whether it's real estate stuff or anything related to that investing wise, that I've like either looked into for a little bit. And I'm like, I'm not over exceeding with all my Investorfuse stuff to be able to do that. I do want to get back into that right now, personally, investing wise. You know Mike Fitzgerald, don't you?
Mike Fitzgerald? No.
He's in CG.
Fitz.
Yeah, Fitz. I call him Fitz.
From South, where does he live in?
Hagerstown. So he's kind of like 2 hours west of where I'm at. I'm in Baltimore City, and he's like 2 hours west, like in the Maryland mountains.
He's an interesting dude.
He's an interesting dude. But investing wise, he just started a fund. So I think I'm going to be putting some of my money into a fund that he has, as well as a close family member money into that. And then I'm also just like just starting to look at some different retirement accounts. I've been studying like that this week, just to start funneling some additional money to. But that's all I'm invested right now, not currently transacting. And then specifically Investorfuse, I've worn a ton of hats over the years, and I came on about a month after we launched, which was February 4 years ago. Yeah. But typically day to day, man, it changes. Like I love doing the podcast and marketing content type stuff. Like that's one of my favorite things. And the reason that I get energy from that is I'm just genuinely interested in just how people click. Yeah. And then I think I also kind of naturally can see somebody and kind of see what makes them successful, try to break that down a little bit, extract from them what could help other people. So I think that's kind of the basis of what I like to do is the interviews, but I'm kind of all over the place. Investorfuse wear a lot of hats.
That's sick. And so what does Investorfuse look like as far as the business perspective? Are you guys, I know you guys have the CRM. I know Dan or you, I don't know who kind of manages that. You guys are always sending out cool email content and free PDFs. So if you're listening to this and you're interested in CRM or even just want to get on a cool email list, dude, the Investorfuse email list is awesome. You guys are always posting great content on there. So
appreciate that, bro.
How can somebody get access or get on the email list and check that out?
Yeah, if you want to get on the email list, feel free to hit me up, carlos@investorfuse.com, or you can reach out on social media. I intentionally don't have my phone on me a lot, so if I don't respond very fast to social media, just try to bear with me there. But you can also go to investorfuse.com/resources. I had Dan actually make that link before I came on here, just in case anybody wanted to touch base or see some stuff that we have going on.
Awesome. So definitely check that out, guys. And what does the business look like now? Is it like you, Dan, kind of run us through a little bit of like what I feel like a lot of the listeners here doing wholesale or the realtors kind of doing some deals, and I want to speak to those people and I want them to see what the other side looks like. Like the CRM side and because it's a lot of work, man, that what you guys do to put together that thing, and there's management and you guys have IT guys and blah, blah, blah. So I want to show coming from your side, what that looks like even in the background to put some information on a computer. For us, it's easy, but for you guys, it's like your whole world.
For sure. Dude, you're asking some good questions. So it was an interesting pivot going from being in a real estate wholesaling operation in Baltimore to going to what's called the SaaS industry, which is software as a service. So this would fall anything for you agents and investors out there. This would fall into any type of CRM that you're using. Carrot, for example, which we talked about. Shout out to Trevor, who was on a virtual happy hour with us last night. So a lot of those tools that you're using, text blasting tools, multi-line dialer tools like Mojo, stuff like that, those are what's called SaaS products, software as a service. From a high level, I get asked a question, what is it like when you were wholesaling versus doing Investorfuse? I would boil it down and say that with wholesaling, I was talking to leads a lot, and I kind of didn't get energy from talking to sellers. Even though I know I was providing a value, a lot of the times I was just negotiating them down. Most of the calls would I be trying to get them down to a low price. So even though I was efficient at it enough to have a successful business, it wasn't something that gave me a ton of energy, those type of negotiations. Now Investorfuse, talking from a high level, and then I'll drill down a little bit more to your question specifically. Now it's almost like I'm on the same, everybody I talk to, I'm like a teammate of theirs, on the side of theirs, to the same point I was talking to before, kind of seeing how people tick and what makes them successful. I'm able to almost be like a consultant or advisor, just kind of seeing how they run their operation, how they're running their lives, more importantly, offer my advice. And then the core of our offering is definitely the software, which is a lead management tool. So you guys are spending all this money, time, energy on marketing or making offers on the MLS, and you want to have a nice database that your team can work off of, manage pretty much like a digital to-do list, whether it's manual next actions like follow-up calls, text, calling a realtor, whatever, and then your automated ones, which are like drip campaigns that would be in any type of sales industry. The example I use all the time, me and one of my roommates both have an Acura car, and we get email and direct mail every single month trying to upgrade us into a new ILX, TLX, buy a new car, whatever. And I know the guy's name, Ralph Rubicki. I've never even met him before, but I just get so much direct mail that he stays top of mind. And that's essentially what we try to do with your seller leads. Is I could probably call it if I tried to say his numbers, because I've seen it on so many direct mail pieces.
They have a healthy budget then.
Yeah. But that's kind of high level, the pivot for me personally, my mindset of cool. Wholesaling, working leads to Investorfuse. Then to drill down a little bit more into that role, what our team structure looks like. Currently, we have 4 U.S.-based staff. So Dan Schwartz is the CEO. He was, while we were wholesaling, he was in a pretty popular rock band. They played Madison Square Garden and crazy venues like that called Pigeons Playing Ping Pong. So he was actually, his kind of story is he was playing 180 shows a year, traveling in a white van while tweaking out our CRM, the Podio at the time, CRM. So that's how Investorfuse came to be. He would be up until like 3-4 in the morning playing shows and stuff, would wake up, tweak out our Podio, and I'd be like, God, this guy's like crazy. He works every single day just making like little automations and stuff in Podio before I understood like the full entrepreneur mindset that people work beyond like 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. And then he ended up making a huge, SaaS platform that a lot of people have used. But yeah, we have 4 US based people. And then we have, I want to say like 12 to 14 overseas teams that are primarily in the Philippines. And they're a mix of integrations that specialize in, connecting your Mojo dialer to Investorfuse, your websites to Investorfuse, your Facebook ads to Investorfuse, things like that. Support, which is overall just kind of like processing inbound requests, stuff like that. And then a customer success team, which actually gets on the same program like this, Zoom. They'll train you how to use the product, best practices, everything like that. That is pretty much the 80-20 of the Investorfuse product and structure. And then we also have the 80-20 Investor Academy, which I told you about. We just kind of rolled that out at the beginning of this year. It's pretty much like a masterclass of modules on systematizing your business, making documentation around that just to run most efficiently. And that's kind of like one of our core values or philosophies is the 80-20 principle. That's the name of our rebranded podcast. And I think it's funny how Dan and I very much grew up kind of like with that mindset innately without putting that word to it, of course, when I was a young high school guy. But simply put, as I always try to do, it's essentially, and it sounds kind of lazy. I don't take lazy as a negative, but it's pretty much like what's the least amount of work I could do to get the maximum amount of results.
Yeah.
So that's something you could kind of like, and I know you're the same way. It's like, that's stuff that you should constantly be looking at and reflecting on and see what type of leverage you can change to get more productivity, more of your 168 hours in a week back to, whatever you want to do. So that's kind of the 2 core things. The software is always the core, but on the side, just from requests that we've had from like consulting on like back-end systems, processes, stuff like that, we ended up making that.
Cool. So you guys are not busy at all or anything?
Yeah. Yeah. Not busy enough for you. Not busy. Not too busy to take the interview, of course.
I love it, bro. That's so good, man. Like, so you got Carlos, like, and I love the shiny object syndrome piece that you touched on. And if you're listening to this and you don't know what we're talking about, it's basically, it's kind of like what the title is. So let's say you're doing wholesale and then all of a sudden you see an ad to do like an e-commerce store, or you get an opportunity from a friend to start selling shoes online, or I don't know, a million bajillion things. And that is shiny object syndrome. And Carlos pretty much has figured out in his mind how to stay focused on Investorfuse, man. Like, wholesale is a shiny object. From talking to 1,000, 2,000 investors, like, I'm sure you're getting tons of shiny objects. Like, dude, like, work on this. I'm trying to set up this new website. Can you work on it for me? Yeah. Do this, do that. Like, just tons of shiny objects. He stayed focused on Investorfuse, and in exchange for that, he's now equity partner. He's got a good position. They have a bunch of team, so they're doing things, and they're going big. So I love that story, man, because wholesale can be shiny, dude. I mean, you see all these checks, quote unquote. You see all these checks. You see and you're talking to people that are doing it. So it's like, shit, you just made 60,000 on one deal. So it's very easy to get lost. How have you kind of maintained your composure, man, and just been like, yo, no, this is what I'm going to do? And like, what goes on in your mind? Like, what kind of practices do you do that?
Yeah, man. I mean, and it hasn't always been easy, especially I would say more so like 2 years ago, probably, was probably the time frame. The last 2 years I have been like laser focused and pretty much just gotten good at saying no, which is probably the best foremost answer, is building that in, especially if you want to be like liked by people and a people person, put a high emphasis on relationship and strategic relationship building. That's a muscle that I definitely got better at growing a couple years ago, is like just straight up saying no and realizing like that's not going to be detrimental to the relationship. Yeah. Probably start with that. As far as like day-to-day type strategy, I mean, this is huge for everything, not just shiny object syndrome, is staying focused, what I call putting on your 80-20 sunglasses, if you will, to block out the shiny object syndromes. But a lot of that is just daily, consistent personal development and working on yourself as a whole. So, I mean, that's a whole podcast episode. I'd have you until the quarantine is over if I talked everything on that. But simply put, just having like consistent reflection. And so if any of you guys you yourself, I'm sure I know you're a Ryan Holiday fan, but just kind of the stoic philosophy of having the mindset of trying to get the most out of every day, and then having like a consistent feedback loop of reflection where you can kind of study yourself, make pivots, adjustments based on educated decisions that you're seeing just from observing your own self. So that's stuff that I go, and I'm not recommending this for everybody, but this is stuff, and I can't remember I told you this on our interview when I was interviewing you, or when we've been off air messing around before. But one thing I go super ham on is the weekly reviews from my Michael Hyatt Full Focus Planner. So pretty much every Friday at the book end of the week, pretty much what I'll do is I'll analyze my entire week, and then I'll have that on paper. And then I do a self-interview with myself, just talking through the week and what happened. And then I'll do that quarterly and annually. It'll be like a quarter is like an hour and a half, because it's like 13 weeks at 10 minutes a clip, roughly. And then I'll do that same thing for the annual, and I'll go back and pretty much, instead of watching like a movie just for that time duration, like an hour and a half, I'll go back and kind of just study myself the last quarter, and then just take like qualitative notes and try to guesstimate stuff. So I'm not saying go that deep, but obviously if you hear that, you're like, wow, this guy's kind of crazy. But reflection is huge.
I can imagine like your roommate walking by and like yourself, this guy's doing this again, you know?
Yeah, no, it's funny because they're usually not here when I'm recording, but with the quarantine, they haven't. So I've just been going, but typically, yeah, they're not here because I just say whatever's on my mind. So yeah, they would probably be like, what the hell?
Yeah, that's pretty cool. That's an interesting habit. I never really heard of anyone that does that. So it's so cool. Like how I find it fascinating how different people have different ways of kind of like keeping themselves present, or keeping themselves like on track of things, or on track of their life. And and the reason I do this podcast, if you're listening and doing these interviews, is you can see a ton of different examples and different lights of people who are high achievers and what they're doing, what they do for themselves, what they do for others to keep them moving at a high level and keep, it's a long journey. But so that's so interesting that you kind of just like, you talk to yourself, you have these things, you have them mapped out on your notebook. And whatever works for you, listening works for you. But this is a great example that Carlos is a young dude and like already so aware that talking to yourself and writing these things down can do so much for your energy, for your emphasis on the next goals, for why you're doing stuff. And some people don't take it serious, but it's serious, man. I mean, what do you say to the listener who's saying like, who's maybe thinking, and it's not bad to think this, by the way, but what do you say to the listener who's maybe thinking like, I don't really need to know why I do stuff. Like, I don't really need to get my why. I don't really need to like, I just want to make money. I just want to do a deal. Mm-hmm. What do you say to that? Like, listener, I don't think it's a bad thing. I just think it's a different train of thought. Like, how do you what would you say to that person?
Yeah, 100%. I'll give my answer of what I would say to this person, and I'll also add it to the previous question as well. So the reason, if you look up and you just start studying, which is pretty much what I did that last year of college when I read The Think and Grow Rich, didn't know what I wanted to do, but I was like, you know what? If I just kind of start studying what like millionaires and billionaires do, I'm at least going to get like closer to that than if I'm just like guessing or doing random stuff.
Yeah.
One of the biggest commonalities I found is they have a structured morning routine. Most millionaires, billionaires, successful people, however you want to do it. A lot of that stuff that would be in a typical routine, Miracle Morning, I know that we talked about is a super popular book by Hal Elrod. That's what I read in that 3 to 4 year frame ago, because I would do a lot of those actual items, meditate, write in a gratitude journal, because that unlocks different stuff in your head and change your behavior, reading out of a good book, whether it's mindset, whatever. So I would do a lot of those things just like randomly until I got that book, Miracle Morning, which helped lock all that in. To the person that's like, and I totally get that. Like, and it's easy to say all this stuff when you're doing well financially, and like, it's easy to say that stuff when it's going good. But like, if you need money, what would I say to them? I would tell them maybe not to change. I think life is very seasonal. Like, maybe they should go out and get that, but I don't think that you should ever sacrifice the big picture. Like, you can go out and grind and try to get a big deal or whatever type of short-term thing. But to quote Kent Clothier, who we talked about last time, I like his post that he had for his 50th birthday is like one of my favorite posts I've seen. I have that clipped and look at that every morning. But he talks about like delaying, what is it called? Like short-term gratification. Is that what it is?
Yeah,
delayed gratification. Thank you. I had a little recall issue there. Delayed gratification. So I would say that's fine. And that's good to have those ambitions to make money, but never exchange that for the big picture of what you're going to do. And delayed gratification is always like the most fulfilling and always the best end result.
That's so sick because I love it. You know, it's like I said, I don't necessarily think it's bad if someone's chasing money, especially, you know, you get into real estate and you have a vision for yourself. Okay, I know in real estate people make money. I want to make money. Let's get into real estate. I don't think that's a bad thought. And I'm no philosopher or anything. I just want to get to the point of, because you talked a lot about the Stoic, and I don't want people to kind of get scared. You read that at your leisure. But, dude, if you want to make money and you want to get into business and you want to study like high achievers, it's okay to be a little bit money driven, but don't let that kind of like rule your world, you know, and like just know that, be aware that the money is going to buy you a lot more than you think, in the sense of the freedom, the time, and you should kind of keep that in mind. So to kind of back it up a little, like when I started, the reason I got into real estate was, all right, I was selling cars. I didn't like it. I wanted to make more money, and I wanted to move out of my house. That was my why. Like that was my so big why, you know? And it did just that. And then after that, I got a little bit of bigger why, and a bigger why, and a bigger why. And I think that's okay. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? You know, like, or like when you first started in like wholesaling, what do you think your why was, if you remember?
Yeah. My why, that's such an interesting conversation. Similarly, I think there's going to be a big demographic of people that have heard, it's like one circle, they're like, okay, I know morning routines are good because billionaires do them. I know what they contain. Okay, I've also heard this, that like your why is your most important thing. Mm-hmm. In the past, wholesaling, I think it was definitely from getting out of college and not having any money, 100% money driven, still money driven today to a certain extent. But what my why has always been kind of focused around is definitely to live just the best life as possible. Back to your point about stoicism, is just kind of like matching like what my best possible life could be. Ed Milet, a few other people have talked about that same, like they define like what hell is. Like when you get to the end of your life and you meet the person that you could have been instead of the person that you are, that's like the ultimate. Ed Milet does a really good job. If any of this stuff resonates with you, he's a great person that talks about similar stuff. Big tattooed dude that has like $400 million worth of real estate currently, something crazy like that. But he talks about that. So, I mean, why has always been having as much fun as possible. That's like, I could pull up my principles for you here, which is kind of like what I say is like my operating system / like how I choose to see reality. Right. So my very first thing is always have fun. So I saw real estate and wholesaling as a place to get enough financial security and wealth to not only have as much fun as possible, but look out for myself and my family is probably the most general thing. And it's kind of it's probably changed slightly since, like 4 or 5 years ago.
I love it. So guys, I mean, listen to this, man. I would rewind that. It's okay to not even be so clear on what your picture is, because sometimes if you hear the big picture of like, oh, my why is to like end world hunger or something, it's like, it's beautiful. I think that's awesome. But if that's your why to get into a wholesale business or to do a wholesale deal, like you're going to have a lot of trouble mentally figuring out the deal. It should be break it down to chunks. But anyways, to kind of I want to get a little bit more like tactical and stuff. What do you've talked with a ton of investors and you guys have a ton of them in your platform, your podcast. What is a commonality that you've seen of wholesalers that do well? I say do well, that are constantly doing deals, earning revenues and actually making money. What are some qualities as far as like marketing, sales, habits? We've seen that like, damn, like these are the top investors and like they all roughly do this. They all do roughly this type of marketing, or they, like what? I know there's no one size fits all, but I would like to hear kind of your feedback on that.
Yeah, love it. Great question. And I'll try to give you something that's one size fits all as possible. Mm-hmm. The biggest thing for success in whatever you're doing, in my opinion, there's a very crucial initial starting block. That's belief. And you have to like innately, deeply believe that it's possible to be successful in that, to the point that it's like a conviction where there's no doubt about it. The very first time that I got introduced to Raul, I'm trying to think of when it was at this point, maybe 4 years ago. I was at my gym. This is when I lived in Baltimore County. I was at my gym. So I was with Investorfuse, so I wasn't wholesaling, but I still love listening to wholesale content. I was listening to a Sean Terry podcast. That's the very first podcast I got, the legend. The very first podcast I got to listen to wholesaling. I was playing basketball, just getting shots up before I started lifting weights. It's how I like to warm up a little bit. And I see this guy, it's like 23 or 24-year-old making all this money on MLS. I was like, I listen to that type of stuff, and this is pretty much the long tail to your answer, to get social proof that something possible, so that you can believe it to the point of a conviction that you'll be successful. Yes. So I'm not necessarily making MLS offers, but I'm in the industry, so I wanted to hear. So I listened to this dude, this young stud dude in Miami, just crushing it on the Sean Terry podcast. So obviously he was a big deal. So I heard that. I'm like, damn, this is something I could tell to my Investorfuse members, like, hey, listen to this guy on how he's making offers on the MLS, how he has some systems around that. It's going to take about 1 in every 45 offers on the MLS, roughly, depending on the person, area, market, everything like that. But when you even break down the numbers and KPIs, that's another form of belief, where you're just kind of like mapping it out, things like that. So I would say commonality number 1 is belief. The best way to get that is through just doing social proof. And that's in anything that you want to do. So like if you're listening to Raul's podcast, like you're doing an amazing job of building social proof in your head to get belief that it's attainable. Without that, it's super, super hard. So for example, like something else that's not even business related is if you're into like biohacking or health, nutrition type stuff, intermittent fasting is really, really popular these days, these last couple of days, which I like to do. I love food more than anybody and love to cook and host people. But intermittent fasting is cool, not only for like body composition of losing body fat, but also I like it mostly for the cognitive benefits. Yes. You can also do multi-day fasting, which I like to do, where you only have like water. Same thing, Sean Terry. I was talking about this with Sean Terry. I don't know him that well, but we were talking at the family reunion mastermind in Tampa, like at the end of the year, towards the end of last year. But multi-day fasting is something that's really, really cool cognitively, and it has a lot of benefits for everything, like increases testosterone, lets your stomach lining rebuild itself, just so many good things. But if you had told me about multi-day fasting, where I would just have black coffee, water, and salt essentially for like 2-3 days at a time, I would not even think it's possible. Before I was able to do that though, where I could go like multiple days fasting without literally eating anything, I watched documentaries on Netflix of seeing people do it for like 60 days. Like medical stuff. So it's like, that's not real estate, but that's a perfect example of what you would do in real estate. Whatever you want to achieve, watch stuff like that. So almost like you're building up social proof in your head that you can actually do it.
There's a popular quote I learned from a mentor of mine. The brain needs proof, not promises.
Exactly. That's exactly the point.
Listening to these podcasts and or YouTube videos or going to events or minds or meetup groups, all that what it's doing to your brain is showing you proof. And that is better than a promise. That is better than Carlos talking to you and saying, hey, if you send this marketing out, you're going to get 10 calls. Out of those 10 calls, you're going to get an appointment and a deal. But if you listen to Carlos interviewing me or another member on a podcast saying his leads and his numbers, you're going to be like, damn, so maybe Carlos is the truth. So that's awesome. So the first thing I got from you is belief, man. And I think Tony Robbins has a good video of like a square. He does like a little quadrant and I think it starts with belief.
I know he's belief to conviction. I know what you're talking about. I can't remember the exact verbiage there.
But maybe I'll find it and I'll put it on the show notes. It's a really good video. It's just like 4 squares. It's actually him talking with Frank Kern like 10 years ago. It's a really cool video. But all right, so you got the belief. Let's say, all right, the person listens to a bunch of podcasts. He's pumped up. He's got some belief. What do you think comes next for it to be like from what you've seen from the successful wholesalers?
100%. So to make it as one size fits all as possible, I think it boils down to belief and then consistency. And also that kind of goes back to the point where you're talking about like Kent's amazing post of like, you have to have a long-term mindset with stuff. So like in this business, you know, and you're whiz and stud obviously in this space, but like your marketing, you need to see that as a minimum, like 6-month investment, at least doing one thing, being able to see how efficient it is. And like, you can tell when talking to some people, one, whether they have like the belief/conviction, and then two, if they actually are going to be consistent. Like if you see them being consistent with something, because that's really the only way you'll be successful is consistency in everything.
Yeah, dude. I was interviewing another guy. His name is Brett Burris. He's out of Tampa. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you know him, Brett. Really cool dude. And he started about 4 years ago in wholesale. And he told me, he's like, I asked him about marketing. And Brett's a successful dude. It's him and his wife and I think a couple of VAs. First year wholesaling, they made $700,000 and $550K net to their pockets. And Brett said, dude, Raul, I haven't stopped mailing for 3 years, every single month. I tweaked some mail pieces. I've sent less. I've sent more. I've sent a different list, but I've never stopped. I'm like, damn, Brett, you know what I realized? I've never stopped sending MLS offers since I started. That's awesome. So everyone's got like their source. And I love that point, man. To be successful in this business or as an agent, investor, realtor, if you own a CRM platform, you pick a specific source or something, just be consistent at it. It's simple. And why do you think people give up, man? Like, why do you think like someone would believe, be consistent, and then either not see results right away or like give up? Like, why do you think somebody would do the first two things right and then not have it work?
Yeah, from like a data or as realistic answer I could give you, probably they probably don't have either enough specialized knowledge or number of encounters to be able to actually get a deal under contract, sell/assign that deal and actually have revenue coming in, which leads to them just not being able to afford like a lifestyle. So they have to quit, I guess I'll say for monetary reasons, or give up for monetary reasons. Besides that, man, I mean, it's all mental. It's so the 80-20 of it is so mental. So I remember even when I was wholesaling, and I feel like this is a commonality with a lot of people, like you'll hear from like your family or, your friend's mom who's a realtor or something like that. Like, you can't do this. This isn't legal, stuff like that. So probably a degree of feeding into that type of stuff, your own limiting beliefs about yourself, or just monetary. Like if you put out all this marketing, depending on like the capital that you're starting with, if you put out a lot of money, you listen to Raul and you're making offers and sending out mail 6 months straight and you just have no revenue coming in, and, you have to pay bills for money that you don't have, then I could see people, giving up, closing up shop. But I think it's probably 2/3 mental on that part, and then the monetary as well.
That's good, man. That's really good. Because if you think about it, you got two options. You start, you stay consistent, you believe in yourself, you do the things that you got to do, and you earn revenue, and you make that a career, and you do whatever you want with it. Or the other option is you end up giving up over time, and it's okay. It doesn't mean you're a failure or anything. Just learn from what happened. But the reason I really wanted to ask that question is I want the listener to understand what it takes. And it's not brilliant. It's not like being brilliant. It's not a PhD or even a associate's degree. It's just belief in yourself. It's more that inner confidence. That's why the 80-20 principle, I love that you guys talk about it so much on the podcast and on your content. Because it is what it is, bro.
It's constant in life. 80-20 principles, everything in life. You see it everywhere in life.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay.
I was just going to say a point too for people that are maybe like that you're talking to, more so like beginners or thinking about doing it, or they're just starting off. If I were dropped into it with no real estate knowledge, whatever, I think the absolute best way to go about becoming successful, not only in this industry, whatever, is the book Robert Greene Mastery Approach, where you pretty much go up. If you're somebody in Miami that's listening to this and you're like, you know what, I really want to get into this. Raul seems like the man, which he is, cool company culture. You find somebody like that and offer to work for, if not free, just like a really limited salary. And you're just going to learn the business by shadowing them, see how we interact, see how he goes about his day, and you're going to put that into your kind of operating system without even more so than you even realize. So that is the number one way that I would do instead of spending my own capital. This is, again, if I was dropping into a situation or going into I'll use a random business too. Like if I was going into like e-commerce or starting like my own Amazon FBA business, something like that, I have no idea about Amazon except that I buy stuff off there all the time. If somebody like put a gun to my head and was like, start a Amazon e-commerce business, that's what I would do. I would try to find somebody that I could be a mentor for, work, a month, 3 months for free, learn the business, show that I'm a valuable asset, and then you're plugged in. Because you don't need to be, and I'm saying this is not the CEO sole operator, but like I think one thing that you could touch on too is I think a lot of people, and maybe this is more so our age, millennials, like think that they have to be the entrepreneur CEO. When really, and like this is kind of cliche to say, but you hear like, the 8th guy at Facebook is like worth X billions of dollars, stuff like that. So just having that mindset, that goes to ego too. Like, hey, I don't need to be the top, CEO person. Like I can fill into an organization, be there X amount of time and make money and get my specialized knowledge up as well.
Yeah. I read a I don't remember where, and I don't want to be quoted on this, but maybe Google it after I say it. I read somewhere that 7 out of 10 millionaires actually are employed by a different person.
Isn't that cool?
Isn't that interesting?
To think about. It's interesting to think about.
Because it's not like the perception. So I love that, man. That's so good. So I want to ask you this question. Would you rather have $2 extra per day or 2 hours extra per day?
It cut off for a second there. I didn't hear the first part of that, my dude.
Would you rather have $500 extra per day or 2 hours extra per day?
2 hours extra per day. Because I mean that goes to everything that we're based off of. And you had a good term for it, return on time. So I mean, I think everybody listening would do that, unless it's the wholesaler example that we gave that just like needs his money. He just wants to cash out real quick with $3,500 at the end of the week. But
I've been asking that question lately, and a lot of guys are like all the time, and I can imagine like 21-year-old me like thinking, what the hell, $500 extra? Like take the $500.
Oh yeah, 100%.
So
100%.
A cool question to like kind of put how important the time is in perspective, because that time can be invaluable. But dude, so and I'll ask one or two more questions. We'll wrap this thing up.
Cool.
What do you kind of like obsessed with? You're saying like I feel like everyone who's like trying to achieve and live like an extraordinary life and kind of live a life on purpose and stuff, like there's either like a chip, you have like some kind of chip on your shoulder, or you have some kind of obsession, like Grant Cardone has a book, The Be Obsessed or Be Average. And so I don't think it's a bad thing. I actually think it's extremely interesting. So what comes to mind when I use the word like, it doesn't even have to be business related, by the way. It could be anything. What do you think?
What am I obsessed with? I wouldn't use that term exactly, but I think it's kind of an interesting example of kind of like this snake eating its own tail, where it's kind of like a repeating message, but you're living through it. So I think my whole thing is I am not obsessed, but just super, super fascinated and interested on like just seeing my life as like a game or experiment, studying myself, living kind of like what I preach and what I'm experimenting on myself, in hopes that I'll be able to extract that and like teach and show other people what's possible through what I'm doing. It sounds a little bit more egotistical than it really is, but I think it's just about like life optimization, starting with like having as much fun and cool experiences as possible, making yourself efficient as possible by like studying yourself. Yeah. And then hopefully at the end of the day, like I said, I have like two years and a quarter of just those self interviews stacked up where I go through and kind of like take notes and get deep on those. So that's kind of what I would say. If I had to say I'm obsessed with one thing, it's like having as much fun as possible, let everything trickle down from there. That's cool. That's a really cool answer. Dude, so, and I think it would be interesting to ask you this question. Since you're more like in the SaaS world, what do you see is like the next or a big opportunity for like, call it like $100 million? Like when you think of like $100 million, either net worth or company, what
what do you kind of think of? Like, how do you get to that objective? Let's say you gun to your head, hey, Carlos, dude, you got to get to 100 million in the next 5 years. Where does your mind go? Like, what industry or what do you think about?
Yeah, gun to my head, I'd probably like take a sip of water real quick, try to analyze the person, get him to put the gun down. But the quarantine and coronavirus is, I think, fast forwarding a lot of stuff that's going to be towards the future. So you're seeing like my nieces are all doing like school lessons from home. A lot of people are working from home. Like both my roommates work for like corporate type companies and are just at home chilling. So Zoom, the platform that we're on, coincidentally, I'm sure the stock has been going up like crazy. Don't know if I would put that as like $100 million or $500 million investment in 5 years, but I think we're just trending towards that in general. Similarly, and it's interesting too how some of the biggest companies or most well-known companies like Uber, they don't own any of their cars. Amazon, same thing. They have trucks and stuff for being able to manufacture and ship stuff like that. Airbnb, where you don't actually own the property, even though they're getting hit pretty hard right now with the pandemic. So I don't have a specific answer, but I kind of just see that trend of it going that way. Us specifically as a company, I don't know if this would be necessarily like a $500 million or $100 million idea, but we always try to stay at like cutting edge of technology and then be able to implement that into our own stuff. Because we're an automation company. So we've been most interested of late in voice technology, which Gary Vee has also talked about, AI, so artificial intelligence, where you could have potentially either like chatbots on your seller site that kind of qualifies a lead for you to save time. And
I like that.
With our software so built into automation, it's ironic, and I said that term, the snake eating its own tail, where it's kind of like a repeating theme in your life. I go all in and obsessed on what I say is like the ultimate 80-20 lever, which is like kind of understanding how your own brain works and then being able to intentionally program that a certain way that you want it to. But then by doing the day-to-day stuff, like me and you both do, like morning rituals and habits and meditating, that is the ultimate form of self-automation.
Yeah.
You're pretty much. So it's like coincidence, the snake eating its tail, that I work for a company that does software automation, but then I'm really most interested in like self-automating yourself.
That's pretty cool. That's a really good way to like understand yourself. But yeah, basically something in the online world is probably trending for those like next big $100, $500 million type valuations and stuff. Mm-hmm. I would completely agree. I think there's a big win if someone can figure out more, basically an online problem that's happening in person right now. There's probably a million things. Something that we're doing in person and we don't even realize that can be done online. I think that there's a big win there. It could be visiting a doctor. It could be, I don't know, many things. So I think that's a really cool way to put it. Yeah. I know you don't really wholesale anymore, but you've talked to so many, and this will be like the last like kind of tactical thing, and we'll wrap this thing up. What if you didn't have any money, maybe you had like $300 or $500, nothing, but you know what you know, what would you do to get a deal and be able to pay bills, like as quick as possible? You got a couple hundred.
Yeah. So I'll go down two pathways. One, 100% would go down the way of like literally just trying to join someone and be under their shadow. Knowing what I know now, I mean, the game to me is, and I think this is a Brent quote or Tom Kroll quote, but it's the art of finding discounted properties. So it's the art of doing that. So if I had a $300 to $500 budget, what I would probably do is try to exhaust some type of virtual help in just absolutely being a savage, just scraping all the free sources. So whether that's making MLS offers or teeing them up to be for sale by owners, Zillow, calling landlords and seeing if they want to offer, I would have that type of stuff automated. Through the remaining bucks, I wouldn't be able to really pay for much, maybe like a niche direct mail list.
Yeah.
But I would probably focus, talking about Jamil Damji Keegley, what I would do if I had the $300 to $500, I would start going deep and long, I guess you could say, on the disposition side of the business. So I would probably just try to find like free leads with like a VA, just scraping the free lead gen sources, and then really just trying to build up my buyer relationships and just trying to find something for them. So if I get anything remotely close to their buying criteria, I could even get, recoup like my $500, investment in marketing if it's like a tighter deal, or if I just want to show really good faith, part of like gifting, strategic relationship building, I might take I might lose. To even go opposite of the example that you used earlier, the wholesaler bro, the younger guy, the hypothetical guy, I might even give him a discount on a first deal. Just say like, hey, I want this to be a lasting relationship. And, some of my fees are going to be a lot higher, but this first one I'll give to you for a good price on.
That's cool. That's a really good answer. No one has answered it that way. So that's pretty awesome, man. But I love it. I love it. So you heard it from the man himself. Carlos, dude, I appreciate you coming on, man. How can people connect with you and follow your stuff? And if they wanted to learn more about Investorfuse and these types of things, how could they be more involved in your world?
Dude, I appreciate that. And I'm a big fan of yours, even from like 5 years ago, playing basketball, just listening to Sean Terry ask you questions to, super grateful that you've done 2 episodes on my podcast, which is awesome. So definitely appreciate you and your time. Best way to reach out for me, you can either email me, carlos@investorfuse.com, investorfuse.com. I'm also on Instagram, and it's that's kind of how I see my life philosophy too. I really see personal and work, quote unquote, work stuff really integrated. So you can follow me on Instagram if you want. I'm usually posting like podcast stuff or pictures of my nieces or dogs or just me having a good time. And that my friends call me Los for short for Carlos. So my Instagram is @itslos21, ITSLOS21. So you can follow me on there, and then feel free to shoot me a friend request on Facebook. Would love to chat. And then really, if you're spending the time to listen to this, you should listen to the interviews I did with Raul, because that's, equally good, if not better, and a lot of different perspective on there. And I'm not typically the one being interviewed. I'm the one that's been doing the interviews the last 3 years. So this was fun when I get the opportunity to be interviewed. Yeah,
this is cool. I'll probably ask you for those links, and maybe I'll put them in the show notes. What was it? Well, so I know you changed the name of the podcast. What is it now?
The podcast now is the 80/20 Real Estate Show.
The 80/20 Real Estate Show. I'm sure they can find it like on iTunes and all that stuff, right?
Yep. Every single podcasting platform. And we have it on YouTube. Coincidentally, our interview just got sent out today. So you can see a blog. Yeah, you can see a blog. I'll text you after this, but blog post, YouTube video, and podcast, all for Raul.
Damn, that's awesome. That's awesome. So guys, check out the podcast, the 80/20 Real Estate Show. I'll put his email and all this stuff on the show notes, carlos@investorfuse.com. Follow him on the Insta. The boy's not on his phone too much, so don't wait. You got to wait a day or two. But no, he's a really cool dude. He'll definitely reach out. They're always willing to help, and they're throwing out tons of great content. They interview some really amazing people. So, dude, again, thanks for thanks for coming on today, sharing all this stuff. I love it.
Dude, my pleasure. We'll 100% link up after the Corona stuff. Like I told you, my dad's down there since August, so we're definitely due for a fun times in Miami. Talk some business, talk some life, have fun first and foremost. Yeah,
that'd be cool. All right, guys. So thank you for listening to this. If you're listening to this on iTunes, you can check us out on YouTube. YouTube name Raul Bulufe, or the website raulbulufe.com. Holla at your boy. Peace, guys.
Holla.